if you're going to learn anything about small businesses, you've come to the right place, everybody. We've got an expert here to talk to us all about construction and roofing. Somebody's been doing this for a good bit of time and started real young. They know what they're doing. Stay tuned, everybody. Welcome, everyone, to the Your Little Castle Show. Again, highlighting those leaders in our community, making a difference, making an impact on our little planet here, and helping our corner of the world grow and help small businesses. We get many people from both the east side and the west side of the Mississippi River. The Mississippi River kind of divides the country here. Everything east of that you consider to be the east side of the country, and then we're the gateway to the west right here, and we've got that beautiful arch. Your focus is on the Illinois side.
Yes, sir.
You have helped many people on the Missouri side too, but you're based out of
Litchfield.
Litchfield, that's right. Because I played football over there in Effingham. Kicked a 52-yarder back in the day over there, ladies and gents. But that was fun. But that's our sports background kicking in there again, and lots that we learned. Talk about, if you missed that first show, check it out. There's a lot of great information about. We shared with you about how sports background and just how to run a business and how that all ties together, and what you learn by being a coach and by being a player and all the great sports background. I'm a big advocate. That's where the Cardinal Cowboy thing comes from. And I got a chance to sit down with Chaim Bloom quickly at the Cardinal spring training and talk to him a little bit. He was out there in the crowd sitting there, and I just we've already met a couple times, so we chatted for a minute. But how that sports background really helps develop our youth and keep us on pace to be a good human on this little planet. With that, obviously, we focus on small business owners. And how many business owners out there, they just are really good at what they do, but they don't have the spotlight to put on them. That's what we're doing here with our show. So we wanted to have Blake come in here to talk about that because he's an expert and deserves to have the spotlight put on him. Tell me, though, as we get into this, I want to know a little bit more about your perspective on being a small business owner, Blake. You've got how many people do you have in your whole crew?
As a team, so all the people in the office and sales guys, you're looking at 12, 13. And then, when you add the crews in there and that, there's probably another 20 or 30. But when you combine all those together, so you're looking probably 40 to 50 employees between 1099 contractors and W-2.
So you've got a heck of a team right there. But anything at 50 or under, I'd say the mid-sized business, you start getting to 100, 100, 200. And then you get the big corporations. I've worked at Anheuser-Busch for a long time with Citicorp, and lots of great stuff they did there. But the small businesses, they really get to help pay close attention to the homeowner or the business, whoever they're working with, because there's just you're dealing with the owner more directly in that case. Is that true? And what do you think some of the benefits of working with small business owners?
Yeah, no, I mean, major benefit I would say with working with small business owners is I think any good small business owner is probably involved. So I think that's the one thing that, as a whole from a consumer side, it definitely, you just feel that connection. I mean, at the end of the day, the owner is typically the one that cares the most, or should be. And I think from that aspect that, just having the ability to pick up the phone and call the owner directly on a small business, definitely makes a difference. And if you see the owner working, I think you can have full confidence in who you're going with.
Yeah, so you get your feet wet. You're going to be out there actually dealing with the issues hands-on versus the first level support goes to second support, and goes to the regional director, and goes to the vice president, and then they finally get to somebody. By then the problem's too far out.
There you go.
Forget it. We already got his money, and we took longer and whatever. But it's great to have that connection you have with a small business owner who can really pay attention to what is going on. Tell me, though, what's the biggest mistake the average homeowner makes, especially when they've gone through a storm or when they've got a new roof they've got to put on? Lots of questions, lots of things they can mess up here. What's the biggest mistake you see homeowners make?
I would say biggest mistake as a whole would just be, signing your rights away to an out-of-town company. So there's a pro and con to everything, and there's good intentions and bad intentions from I think certain people. And at the end of the day, it's one of those things that for me, I would say as a homeowner, as far as getting through bids, you're gonna a typical storm. I'm sure anybody around this area has experienced it. Is you're gonna have a bunch of people door knocking. You're gonna have a bunch of people bugging you. You're gonna have cards left. You're gonna have it's like, who do you go with? Who do you choose? How do you choose? Definitely is one of the bigger mistakes. People unfortunately prey on vulnerable individuals, and it's one of those things for me. It's just, I always say, go local, go with somebody that is proven, check the reviews. Don't, just because it's a it's somebody that can talk well at your front door, and their company out of just wherever doesn't mean they're going to pick up the phone if there's ever a mistake. At the end of the day, we're blessed with a lot of good roofing companies locally and in the area, and I think that's take advantage of that. Don't just because somebody's knocking on your door and talks well that day, do your research. Don't say yes immediately, and hold yourself accountable.
Yeah, do your research. It's because there's a lot of they call them storm chasers, and they come out when the storms come around. Everybody, and in St. Louis, and the Midwest, this whole metro area, the whole Midwest region, there's a lot of storms. So there's a lot of opportunity for guys to say, hey man, haven't made any money so far, but man, I think I could be a roofing guy, and I could go out and do a little construction and make this happen. And you want to get somebody with the reputation, the reviews you see that Blake and his team have put together here too. A lot that it goes into that. Mostly residential, a little commercial. What do you focus on? What do you like?
So both. We've actually done more commercial this first 2 months of 2026 than we did probably the last 2 years. So a lot of commercial coming. It's one of those things I love. It's nice to see you kind of get a little bit more bigger impact, I feel like, as far as just as a whole. But we had an opportunity to bid a nursing home that, if everything goes smoothly, we should end up getting. But it's one of those things, like that impact, definitely affects a lot more people, takes a lot more time. We worked on that quote for about 4 or 5 months. So it's not just an immediate, get the house done, turn and burn kind of thing and move on to the next. Those commercial side is definitely high energy, is what I say. You got to do it, and you got to have a lot of hyper focus. But as far as the residential goes, I would say that's primarily most of our business as a whole. We've had a lot of storms. Being right there in Litchfield, right on 55, it's the same distance to go to O'Fallon, Illinois, as it is to go to Springfield. So we're able to kind of take care of a large radius, just being right there on the interstate. And in our favor, maybe not so much as the homeowner's favor, is we've had a lot of storms within that radius the last couple of years. So it's really allowed us to take advantage of that market. But I would say, overall, we'll do anything on the exterior. We do a little bit more than roofing as well. We do roof, siding, gutters, fascia, soffit, tuck pointing. And then we'll also general contract, anything from a new home build, framing, building a garage. I'd say custom houses is a little bit out of our realm, but, standard additions, standard decks, fences, stuff like that. We're able to kind of give it a one-stop shop. We have other contractors, like I said in the previous video, that we work with very well. And it's one of those things that if, being that you do trust us and being the one that, you want to just talk to, we'll take care of that whole management. I'd say, the two things you can control in our industry is follow-up and communication. So,
right, down. You can control follow-up and communication. Very true.
So,
well said.
Just as a whole, that's, kind of a wide realm, but, the main storm damage areas that get affected has been our primary business the last couple of years.
Well said. What do you like about working in this region? Metro East, St. Louis area, there's a lot to be said here. There's about 3.3 million people. About a third of those are over on the east side of the river there where you're based. But what do you like most about it? Lots of business to be had, but lots of people to get the help.
Yeah, you never know who you're walking up to. You never know where you're going area to area. A lot of different culture, a lot of different just experiences. And, I grew up in a small town town of about 3,500 people. So, my high school class graduated with less than 90 kids. So you definitely, you get the farmer aspect, and then you go to the city a little bit, and it just, honestly, it's the experience of like, you just, the old saying, don't judge a book by its cover, but you just never know who you're walking in the door with. And I think that really, it's probably my favorite part about the job is you just never know who you're meeting in the opportunity, as well as today, you never know what's going to fall at your feet.
Yeah, there's so much. Like life is like a box of chocolates, they say, and you never know what you're going to get. But keeping that persistence that you learn from playing sports, consistency, always operating with a system and being on task, and integrity, all those things. Obviously, you've proven, again, look at the reviews. Blake has had put together 108 reviews in a short time. 5 years, but I've been doing about 5 years too. We finally got hit with the opportunity to say we had to pay attention to that, and then we started. But whatever you focus on grows, they talk about. But you're doing a great job. A lot of people have had very nice things to say. Tell me a time when you had a particular instance where you had to really go out of your way to help a client. Somebody that might have been left out on the limb with another contractor. Don't name them, of course, but we're in a difficult situation where you really help somebody.
So I'd say the one that, it comes to my mind probably first is there's two. I'll say the one that probably took the longest to overcome, which I said it in the last video, 356 days to go from a denial to an approval. Is there was a situation in Troy, Illinois where, insurance came out, they denied a roof, and then we came out, they called us, they said, hey, we were denied, can you come look at this, see if there's any damage? And we were able to kind of come in, we looked at it, there was damage, circled it, documented it, was able to get a re-inspect. As a homeowner, you're entitled to 2 inspections. So even if you're denied, you're entitled to a free re-inspect with really nothing. So then at that point, we re-inspected, came out, adjuster said he was going to approve it, lost the pictures, so it got denied a second time. So then, fighting for about 6 months of just consistent follow-up and communication and going back and forth, and, the agent was a huge help, and then, you hit the holidays and everything else. This claim started in May from the damage and then relayed over through Christmas and came all the way to the following May. So with that, it was just a lot of persistency. At the end of the day, we were able to go out after about six adjuster appointments, 6 different lines of communication with people, and get the decision maker to actually of the insurance company, try not to name names,
Right.
get that approved and, really help that customer get the replacement he wanted. He wanted to sell his house, and it was a situation where, every time there was a buyer, they were like, hey, your roof's old, your roof needs replaced. And he's sitting there trying to fight his insurance company. So he ended up taking his house off the market. We ended up actually getting, like I said, the roof paid for, bought, and then not even a month or 2 after, he actually ended up selling his house. So unfortunately delayed plans for a while, but that was probably the most impactful as far as just all around, like, seeing how Elite operates. As far as somebody that, damage-wise, I would say emergency response, we offer 24/7 tarp services. So it doesn't matter if it's 3 o'clock in the morning, we have an emergency line where, you can call us if you got a leak or anything. We're going to send somebody out there, and sometimes it may even be myself. But it's we had a situation in Granite City for a commercial property where a tornado came through, ripped off half the roof. The material underneath was some kind of metal that's not allowed to get wet, and we were there within an hour and a half, and it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. We were able to secure the property. It took about 4 or 5 months due to the size of the roof to get anything paid for, get the adjusters out there. We were able to hire in emergency service for the electrical because the power got ripped out. We were able to work with Ameren,
Wow.
get all that, kind of contained. So just the emergency response, and then able to kind of complete that roof 5 to 6 months later after the adjuster came out was something definitely that was big, and it led into, honestly, about 10 more jobs. So everybody kind of seen that, and like I said, word of mouth's everything.
There you go. Denial is not just a river over in Africa, is that right? It's also something you don't want to get from your insurance company when you're trying to get a repair made. So you help somebody that's been denied twice, and you went through the process there. We talked about that. Great examples you got there. Sometimes you really help somebody. Tell me a time, though, when you went through a big challenge as a business owner. What's it like running a business?
Whew.
You've got a number of those. Yeah, you get some response here, but yeah, what's it like? Tell me a time, but it made you stronger. You've obviously made it.
I think, honestly, the most impactful thing, I think there's many challenges. I think it's just how well you face them. One of my favorite things is what's one more day. So when you're going through stuff, what's one more day? And I focus on my team probably more than anything, and that's, again, you'll never hear me stop talking about it, but I would say cash flow. As you grow with insurance companies, as anybody know, it usually, just anybody who's made a claim, takes sometimes 2, 4, 6, 8, 12 weeks to get, that second check that is typically called depreciation into your hand and paid to the contractor. So when we've been able to pretty much double our business year after year the last couple of years, it's the hardest part is, like I said, cash flow. So when you go to your team and you look great on paper, or things look great on paper, or calling those customers and saying, hey, like, we're going to have to pause your job for a month, not because we want to, but because, we have to wait on the 50 people behind you to pay. It's probably the one thing that I would say most people don't express or want to admit, or they take it as a failure. And I think, as business owners, as people, as leaders, nobody wants to actually say they failed. And it's been probably the most valuable lesson is just realizing that for us, as we've continued to hit, growth margins and our goals is, last year we took a big step on November 1st. We said, hey, anything sold after November 1st, we're going to put on next year. Weather's changing. It's going to get colder anyway, but, we need to clean up what we did all year. We need to be able to take initiative and really just ensure that the consistency of who we are and what our foundation was created on maintains intact, and we're not just wearing it recklessly. So it's definitely one of those things. I'm sure there's critics everywhere on that, and whatnot. But it's as you grow and as you hit milestones, and never wanting to say no to a job. I think again, when I go back to communication and follow up, being able to go to a homeowner and like, look, I understand you called us, I understand you trust us. It's November, but we're going to get to your roof in March, and them still saying yes, I think really goes a long way, and it kind of shows who you are. So I kind of wrap that back up into a positive, but definitely the hardest part is just as a roofing company, and I think as a whole is just maintaining your checks and balances and going from there.
Well said. Somebody knows what they're talking about, everybody. Stay tuned. We're going to be back here. We're going to show you a little more. We're going to finish up what our good friend from Carol from Little Patriots Embrace was doing with a fundraiser they did with Josh Grayson came in town to play a private concert that we had here. Pretty neat. Check this out.
Important activity. And I've got to have the voice, so I'm not going to talk very long, but I just want to thank all of you for being here and thank our sponsors for coming through for us this year. We have over 1,000 military children waiting for a deployment package. Their parents have deployed. And we had no way to serve them. And now we do, because everyone's sitting in these chairs. And I thank you for that.
Yay.
Thank you, Carol. You're an amazing job running an awesome work. I've been working with Carol now since 2013. So my first event with her was on the field at Busch Stadium. Now batting for team, whichever. And the different sponsors. I had a last-minute sponsor come in, shout out for my car shield guys, and they said, "Here's how much that stuff." And these guys, we're getting a lot of guys in a little contest, see who sells the most, and then they get to hit on the field. So it was great fun, win-win-win for everybody. So with that, let's give a nice warm introduction. And we've got one of the best artists that many people have seen over the years here. Back in 2004, he was the New Artist of the Year nominee. He had a breakthrough video, I Want to Live, in 2005. Gained public attention as the 4th place finalist on the 2nd season of American Idol. Is that pretty cool? You guys realize American Idol's been around? We've had a couple of guys on my show. We got to get Josh on the show. They got a couple great crew here with them too. Sydney. Dan's here too. So and these guys are musicians, been doing this for a long time. So give it up for Josh Grayson. And Nate and Sydney.
For the small business owners and leaders in our community to be on our show. This is the Your Little Castle show. We air 3 times a week, every week on ABC, and we would like to put somebody you know, or maybe it's you, who's a business owner, to be on our show. You'll sit right here in our guest chair, right here, sitting here talking to us. We're going to put on the wall your website and everything about you, and highlight you as a leader. Fill out the form you see here on our website. It's bigleagues.com. And if you go to bigleagues.com, fill out this form, takes just a couple seconds, and you can even schedule yourself right here. Schedule yourself to be on the show. And there is no charge for us to record you. There's no charge to be in the studio. Check it out if you would like to be on. Fill out the form again, bigleagues.com. This is where we can turn any interview into a series of clips. Check that out. Go to bigleagues.com. Well, there you have it, everybody. And we talk about how the media impacts everything. Here's our book, Magnetized Media. Yours truly wrote the foreword here. This is the #1 seller on Amazon. You see, they took where did they get that picture from? But the interweb's got everything out there, right? But how has the media changed the way business is run? And I'm sure that's impacted you. You've got a great-looking website. I know the platform you're using for your website. Good decision there. We are a reseller for them as well. Great company that does that. But how has the world changed in the media space where you've got to now take videos and have a video guy and have a website and do social media?
Yes, I think, don't want to say keeping up with the Joneses, but it's just the new way. I mean, AI is taking over tremendously. Everybody's, instead of just looking on Google, even saying, who's the best roofing company in my area or roofers near me, they're asking ChatGPT. So it's different. I don't know what the exact word is. You're probably better at it than me, but different rankings and algorithms and different things for.
Yeah, algorithms is a good way to say it. The algorithms built into that are so hard to disseminate, but they're figuring out what to say about you, and they'll do a whole paragraph all about your business. Great reviews this guy's got, though.
Yes. No, so, yeah, I mean, we got our SEO guy that kind of helps balance and kind of keep us up to date on different things. Josh Davis, he's out of the O'Fallon area. He's been fantastic. And then we have a videographer that kind of comes in, goes site to site, interviews clients and different things on different situations. And I mean, I think that's just where it kind of really sets the standard as far as getting your name out there. And, just when somebody needs you, they'd already know who you are. They don't think about anything else. And then I think our biggest decision was wrapping our trucks. So, driving around, especially being in a small town community, is, Google's great for those clients that are in some bigger towns and that where there's multiple roofing companies. But in a local area, especially when you're establishing, your foundation there, is we basically have had 2 roofing companies for the last 40 years. And then so coming in as the new guy, it was just, as people kind of, our millennial group and everything else, it's like, what are they prone to? And I think the wrapping the trucks was fantastic. It definitely was a huge boost in our marketing business.
Yeah,
So.
these are all methods to get the name out there. You got to look the part. If you drive up some beat up old pickup truck, they're going to question whether or not you're going to do that. But get a nice truck wrap, and you get part of the business. What is it that you often see, without naming any names, of course? But what are some of the mistakes you've seen some of your competitors make? Mistakes that you've seen them make that you don't want to see a customer make?
Yeah, I think a couple things I would say is, from an internal perspective, it would just be not willing to, admit when they need, like I said, everybody has strengths and weaknesses, but admit when they need help and reaching out to somebody that may be better at you than something. At the end of the day, we don't know everything. But also just, from a simple standpoint, when you call somebody and they say they can get there next week, just that should be a red flag. Like I said earlier in the video, we had customers in November willing to wait till March. And I think it just shows, like, at the end of the day, everybody's schedule is slightly different. But when you have storms and you have multiple people, need multiple jobs done and there's lots of work in the area, somebody coming in and saying they're getting there next week probably isn't somebody that's going to have the proper insurance and proper, licensing. The biggest difference I'd say between the east and west side of the river is just, on the east side, it's we actually have to go take a test and, do some different things. I joke.
Licensing requirements over there.
Correct. And, there is a difference between an unlimited license and a limited license, and, who can do commercial and who can do residential only. And then just, again, people flock towards a storm. We mentioned storm chasers earlier, and it's just, it all comes down to, doing your research. So I mentioned that earlier, but, as far as like the everyday roofer in the area, it's taking shortcuts on towns that, don't have code requirements. We have a lot of small town municipalities, and they're not doing what's required in some of the bigger towns. And, again, I think that's a lack of a standard for just in general. So, like, in my opinion, if we do the best every time, if we're doing what the most strict municipality requires on every single roof, then we're never going to run into issues. So at the end of the day, there's flaws around, if they're not replacing the step flashing, if they're not replacing the drip edge, if they're reusing different products, it's just not worth it. Because at the end of the day, if you invest in your home, that's somewhere you want to stay. A roof is very expensive. It's something that a lot of people take the time to either, save for multiple years or invest into, financing, which is something we offer. It's just one of those things that at the end of the day, why do you want to have to repay for it in 5 years? Because if there's a good chance that they're taking shortcuts year 1, when you're hiring them, they're not going to respond in year 5. So.
Great point, yes. And you mentioned how often, you have the exception where somebody can take a job from November to March, but how often does a typical job take to get done?
So with us, you give us a call. We're typically booking anywhere from 3 to 5 weeks out. We usually run about 2 to 4 roofs a day, depending on busy season and whatnot. The one thing I will say is, I'm fortunate enough to have a couple rental properties where I actually have my crews in-house. It's the same crews every day that we use. We're not bouncing around, so we're able to create flexibility. I think it's, I don't want to say it's a vague question. 3 to 5 weeks is kind of the standard, depending on season, but we're also, we create flexibility in our schedule. We're willing to work weekends. We're willing to work, we leave Wednesdays open generally in our schedule. So if you do have an emergency or something leaking, we're able to kind of squeeze you in there. So we work really well with realtors, property managers, even insurance agents. We have a lot of relationships there to where, if a house needs to get sold or, a bedroom or a rental needs to get rented out, we have that emergency kind of response time to where we're going to slide you in there. So it just, as far as timeline goes, we can get you as fast as we need to. We'll move some stuff around if we have to, but 4 to 5 weeks is generally a time frame you're looking at, and then a typical roof is going to take 1 day on a standard size house.
All right, yeah. So you really have it nailed down for the process to get the installation done too. We got a crews that works with the same crews consistently. That's important. Well, tell me the process. What is it somebody does to hire you? Go to the website. Walk me through the process though.
Yeah, so I'd say majority of our calls are through the office number, 217-851-3836. It's on the website. The other option is going to be, through the website as far as click and schedule an appointment. It goes directly to our office manager. She'll reach out, outbound. You just type in your little bit of information, kind of how'd you hear about us, what you need. And then, within 48 hours, and weather permitting, we're going to be at your house. So typically we have a 24-hour response time, but you fill out the application that comes through, we reach out, we schedule the appointment. One of the team members, they'll go out, they'll evaluate the damage. If it's insurance, we'll help, we'll assist you from start to finish as far as how to make the phone call, what questions to ask, proper documentation ahead of time. At the end of the day, we're going to provide you with photos before we ever ask you to do anything. So yes, we want you to be home, and yes, we want to get on your roof. So it's two things that allow us to keep our process smooth. Once you commit to us, you're going to sign contracts, pick out colors, go review everything, and then we actually, through our CRM, we're able to invite you to what we call a customer portal. So what that does is, again, follow-up communication. That's the two things we can always control. It's the two things that I try to really stay consistent on. And it'll show you all our before photos. It shows you our delivery date. It shows you our schedule date. It shows you just what your balance is, everything. If there's any supplements, so supplement is anything missed by the insurance company where we go back and we say, hey, you missed X, Y, Z, you owe us for this, and then from there, job's started, job's completed. We're going to walk through. So our account manager who sold you the job is generally going to be on site during the day of install. We also have a quality control person that is there throughout the day, just making sure that cleanup and our standards held high. Again, everything's getting changed. And then at the end of the job, we have a project manager come by and do kind of a final review just to make sure the yards are cleaned up. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter how good it's on the roof. If you don't clean up, it doesn't mean nothing. It's kind of my thing. That's a Marine Corps mentality. Cleanup's everything. And then from there, salesman's going to come back. They're going to collect a final check, do a walkthrough, make sure everything went well, and go from there. But my goal from, we have weekly meetings on every job. We have a calendar that's 6 foot by 12 foot hanging in our office of every job. Is we want to bug you. And I know that's a hard thing to say in our industry, and it may sound crazy, but if we're bugging you and we're annoying you with phone calls and emails, we're doing our job. So
there you have it, everybody. An expert in our community, a leader, and a business you can trust her. Stay tuned. This is your Little Castle Show. Giddy up.